Hello friends and enemies, welcome to or back to Happy for Now. It's me, Isabel here, or Izzy, whatever you want to call me, I don't really care. I'm here to, as the title suggests, as the thumbnail suggests, talk about serial killer romances. And you might be like, that's interesting, why do you want to talk about this? The thing is, like, I've noticed a weird trend of a resurgence of them. And in reflecting on where we are at as a society in the States, for the most part, I'm going to focus on because that's where I live. So that's where I have the best grasp of cultural and societal norms, right? I don't think this doesn't not apply to other places. I'm sure it does. But having a grasp on what's going on societally here and somewhat around the world, but still, why I think there has been this resurgence and what I think is going on. Because at the end of the day, reading is political, and if you don't believe that, this is probably not the video for you. But also, I think as romance readers, sometimes we forget how much our books are reflecting back the world. And some of that reflection is basically like what society wants / like desires to an extent. If we go back to 2007-ish, the billionaire romances that took off were an attempt to provide a book to escape to where you didn't have to think about income. You didn't have to think about day-to-day needs because they were already being delivered and handled because, hello, you were in love with a billionaire. The idea that a billionaire would be there to take care of you and handle all your things is a lucrative thing when many people are out of work and we are facing a giant recession and all of these things happening. Right now, we are watching, at least in the States, again, that's where I live, so it's going to be our cultural focus here to an extent. Access to safe healthcare around birth and birth control is being stripped away, and the accidental pregnancy trope is kind of taking off again. I have seen more defenders and fans of it than I have ever before, and I don't hate the trope. I'm fine with it. I'm just like indifferent on it. I will tell you that. But yeah, like that's taking off. Is that a reflection back at the fact that like our access to vital things, to our reproductive rights is being stripped away? Food for thought. We've seen women publicly lusting after a known murderer who murdered 2 women on platforms like TikTok, and I'm sure elsewhere. Then we were watching stalker serial killer romances just kind of take off again in a way that like is way more mainstream than they previously were. That's for sure. And again, they've never went away. By no means am I saying they've went away, because they've always been around, and I feel like there's always been a handful coming out. And I've dabbled for a long time in this trope pairing. So this is a place of love and an enjoyment of these tropes. But I do think it's sometimes fun to have the conversation or just kind of talk with y'all about our thoughts on where and why this is happening. Why is it picking back up again? Why is it hitting even more mainstream than it ever did before? Because I definitely don't think I would have, I never would have seen an S.T. Abbey book in the stores prior to honestly probably the last year and a half, or seeing Butcher and Blackbird go wide, Haunting Adeline. Those are books to me that like prior to the last year and a half would have never hit shelves in stores, which isn't a bad thing, but I just think it's interesting. So yeah, I think there's something that some of us are seeking when we read these books, and I think it's intentional and unintentional, and we don't realize it's what we're seeking. And I know there's gonna be somebody in the comments who's like, I'm reading for escapism, and that's fine. That if that's what you want to think, there's still something you're seeking in these tropes. And I have some theories on what I think is going on here. I do think we have to note here too, also there can be qualities of dark romance that are very healing to victims of various things, and you can find a lot of comfort in people surviving really horrible things and then also finding love. And that conversation is valid, and I'm never going to like dismiss people for enjoying this genre, because again, I also enjoy this genre. I just think it's interesting to interrogate some of the reasoning I think is happening. I do think one big thing with this current takeoff in the trope and stuff is there's a safety in connecting yourself to the danger and feeling like I'm reading about this danger, I am prepping myself if it ever happened to me, not to like fall in love with them, okay, because it's fiction, we know that. I feel like there's a similar reasoning on women who engage with true crime items often, is it's this idea that if I connect myself to these awful and horrific events and I hear about them and I learn about them, I can do better and it won't happen to me. Except for like the danger is probably the white man in your house. It's fine. I also think there's safety in an imaginary world to be aligned with a killer. Like it's different. It's fun. It feels invigorating, right? It's like so unique and different from our usuals, like from what real life would be, which is again the danger in your own home, generally speaking, or with your intimate partner. I listen, one part I do think really holds true here also is in the bad boy good girl trope / sometimes like Butcher and Blackbird, they're both serial killers together, and that's a fascinating pairing. But I do think there's like an if I could fix him vibe to some of these a lot of the time, which is also very funny to me because we cannot fix him. We cannot fix him, y'all. Please stop trying to fix him. And then another thing I think is there is such a safety entering a genre like romance with these kinds of tropes versus a horror book or other thing or thriller or whatever else you want to read, because you know at the end you are guaranteed the romance seal of approval, and if it's not there, trust me, people will be screaming in the reviews, as they should be. As they should be. I am also screaming in the reviews when this happens. There should be that HEA or HFN. That happily ever after or happy for now is going to be there. So you know that no matter what you go through with this couple in this book, what the hero does to her or what happens to her, they're going to make it out together. And in some way there should be some redemption to his character. Again, the I can fix him is showing. Whereas I feel like in general, like media consumption around these things, the women characters, generally speaking, are there to just be killed. They just serve as a device to move the plot forward around this killer's like narrative or around what happened, and like we really focus on the killer or like not the victims. So in the romance book genre with this trope, I feel like we get served it differently and in different flavors. We often get heroes who are, yes, they're a serial killer, but it's also kind of pushing propaganda a little bit, we'll call it, because you know it's the fact that these serial killers are able to take out people that the cops couldn't catch, whether that be in Haunting Adeline, Zaid is actively catching people who are sex trafficking. That leans into a lot of QAnon conspiracies, unfortunately, not how sex trafficking usually works, unfortunately, but that's fine. The authors addressed it, and I admire her for addressing some of the issues in this book. But you know, that, or in Butcher and Blackbird, same thing, like they're hunting down people who also kill other people and take advantage of them. So like there's that propaganda quality of like they're doing the job the cops couldn't do, but they're basically cops at the same time. So that's a different conversation that I don't really want to have with this. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting the way it plays out differently in romance books. I also think it's fascinating because this genre is 100% dominated by white men love interests. I don't know that I've read a single or seen a single serial killer romance that features a person of color. That one, I'd love to hear it because I truly don't think there are any. And I think we're remiss not to acknowledge that. I don't even think there are, I know of one serial killer series, and that's it. So like, again, I just think we're remiss not to mention that, because also, again, when we look at statistics, the most likely person for intimate partner violence is a white man. So, I just think it's fascinating, y'all. So, let's talk about what I enjoy and why I enjoy these tropes sometimes. We all know here, I love a bonkers book. I've done many of bonkers reading vlogs. I talk about the bonkers books I read. I love them. They're so much fun, right? But the reason I'll read this trope and what I enjoy about it is sometimes I need something that is intense and also bonkers and could never happen in real life type of contemporary, but isn't mafia. And I feel like this is, like, these can be such an escape in the contemporary genre / darker romance genre at times, because some of the things that happen in dark romance books are a little too real for me. But when I read these, none of this is happening in real life. This is never going to be a thing. It's fine. I will be fine. So I feel like I can remove myself from the reality of it a lot more because it is still contemporary. But again, absolutely none of it feels in any way realistic or possible or anything. I also, as always, am going to commend the fact that there is a lot of value in being able to work through life's traumas with darker books sometimes. And that applies here always and forever and always will. And I do think another thing is, like, a lot of people probably enjoy these even because sometimes our characters go through a lot of really horrific things, and then, you know, they're still getting that HEA at the end. For me, like, those are the two big reasons why I enjoy it sometimes. Again, I feel like I can fully remove myself from the contemporariness of the book because it is so bonkers bananas that I'm like, what? Except for sometimes I can't, because things like Haunting Adeline happen where I read this pre her editing some things. All I could think about was how the entire book felt like she isn't, but like it was based on QAnon. Like, she didn't use QAnon, but it felt very QAnon, and it was published at a time that a lot of QAnon discourse was happening on the internet, and we were learning a lot of things that people who believe in QAnon believe. And that was kind of scary to read reflected back in an indie book with a stalker killer romance hero. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I don't know. I just talked at y'all for like a while about this trope. I just think it's interesting why and how it's taking off right now, because like I said, as I look around myself and a lot of people I'm around right now, like the people I'm surrounded by, there's a lot of fear. there's a lot of fear about access to things, about who wants to hurt you. Even people not around me, when I get the TikToks of these white women crying because they're convinced a man followed them around the Target, and that's not what happened. That sounds so mean, but that's not what happened, right? But they're convinced they're gonna get kidnapped, their kids getting kidnapped, whatever, and sex trafficked. I think at times these kinds of books bubbling up as much as they have is a reflection of those fears in society, and this like idea that there's a lot more danger than there actually is, because the world's actually a lot safer now than it ever has been before, which wild concept, I feel like, for some people. On that note, I do want to know what y'all think. What trope do you think is taking off right now because of the world, like the way the world is right now? And if you don't have any comments, you can leave me an emoji of your choice down below. I don't know what emoji to tell you to leave for this video, so you can do that down there. I will have links to Be My Friend anywhere on the internet. I'll have links to the couple articles I read and things I used as resources. That'll all be down there. I will be back to talk to y'all in just a few days in my next video. Bye.
Already packing, come with me. I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be. Life with no distractions. We'll get away